Hello, this is Susie, and I am joined by my husband, Jan. And today we are going to talk about how to convince your partner to live abroad for a month. And if you know, let me close this. Sorry about that. I was trying to open up LinkedIn on my other screen to see who is joining live. But if you are joining live, send us just put a comment below so we know that you are joining, and we can address any questions. But I'd love to know who is here live, and if you're catching the replay, you can put a comment below too to let us know that you are with us. So today we are going to cover our story, which is all about how I convinced, and I really struggled to use the word convince because like I didn't really like convince. It's not like I sat down with like a PowerPoint presentation. I was like, this is why we need to travel the world for a year. We're gonna not work. But anyway, I use the term convince though because A, it's short, and B, people do ask me. I have these dreams of traveling and working abroad, but how can I convince my partner to do that same thing? So it's funny because although I use the term convince, it's not about convincing them at all. I would say a better term for that is just getting them on board with this idea. So we'll share our experience in how I got Jan on board with traveling for a full year. So and actually another reason why this is a bit self-indulgent, but 10 years ago, at the end of August, we left on our year-long around the world trip. So I can't believe it's been 10 years. We're going to recount the story of how it all came about. And it'll be interesting because we haven't really talked about the details. I mean, we talk about our trip, and I have my like story that I share, but it'll be interesting to hear Jan's version. We don't really I mean, there's really no need to talk about like the process of getting there. You just kind of talk about the fun things that we did. But want to talk about the process, and so we'll start there. I'll then kind of summarize with some things that I think I did that worked well. Jan might think otherwise. I don't know. And some mistakes that I made, and also addressing some of the big concerns, the cost of it, impact to career, especially if you have kids, childcare, how does that all fit in? So we'll cover that later on, as well as some creative solutions for how to make it work if maybe you do have these big dreams, but like it just isn't possible for whatever the life scenario is. We can get creative with how to still let you live your dream, but make it work, as a whole. So we'll get to that. I want to first thank Jan for joining me because if you know Jan, this was not an easy ask, but he's here. I said, give the people what they want, and that's more Jan. And the thing is that I can talk all day, and I do talk all day about this, but I think that's what's going to be really powerful. Is that what's really going to be powerful is to hear from his perspective on what was going through his brain as I was like throwing out this crazy idea of traveling and for an entire year. Hi Alan, it says that the video stream is still loading, so hopefully that gets fixed. But anyway, if you don't know us and know our story, I'll rewind. It is the year 2012. We got married about 6 months before Jan found out that the company he was working for, a retailer, the company he was working for got acquired by a larger company. So they were then closing the Chicago headquarters. So the way I usually tell this is that at that point I had this like aha moment, where the sabbatical seed that I had in the back of my head just kind of came to the forefront. And I was like, well, you can find a new job now or you can find a new job later. But I think that I was trying to think about the timeline. And I think that before I had that conversation, we had explored like the relocation idea a little bit. And we decided that just like wasn't for us. It would be like suburb life. We were like in downtown Chicago. That was just not for us. So we then, once that was decided that was not an option, then it was okay, well, if you have to find a new job anyway, and I don't remember how long it took for that whole conversation, but or exploration. But once we recognized that we had to find a new job anyway, then it was the now or later conversation. And I mean, what was your first, do you remember I know this was 10 years ago. What was your first reaction to this? Like,
well, I remember you coming to me and saying, hey, here's an idea. And I said, no, absolutely not. At that point, I was focused on my career, right? So trying to figure out, okay, what's next? What's going to get me to the next level, to where I want to be ultimately for my professional life. So at that point, thinking a gap would just be, it wasn't the right time, right, for the gap, right? I was already in a situation where I was losing a role or an opportunity, had to go out and find something, but I wanted to make sure I stayed on track for what I wanted to be professionally. So that was my initial, no, you're crazy, absolutely not. And then Susie kept bringing it up every once in a while. I think, I don't even remember when you came to me, maybe probably like a couple of weeks after they made the announcement. You were like, here's an idea. And then I said no. And then every couple of weeks you would bring it back up again. I said no. And at that point, I was doing my networking, polishing resumes, getting everything kind of ready for that next step, as you would if you were looking to do job hunting, right? And
I should pause. So you did have quite a lot of notice though. So yes. This was probably, we found out, I feel like it was October 2012. And then the actual end date wasn't until the end of June or mid-June of 2013.
Yeah.
So quite a lot of time, or a lot of notice. Obviously a lot of people don't have that luxury, but this was, we had some time to kind of figure things out. And figure out what the right next steps were. So I think like October we were looking at relocation. I don't even remember what we did or did not do in like November, December, but I remember there being like a turning point of you like going from like a hard pass to this idea to like a maybe. And that was in January. We went to the Travel and Adventure show that was in Chicago. This is like it goes, in cities all over the US, but it's like this massive, if you're in Chicago, it's at the McCormick Center and it's huge stages, like Rick Steves and Samantha Brown are there and they're talking about travel and, there's booths for all countries around the world. And that was the first time that probably either of us had been there, but I think that seeing it got you excited about like things you could do and see in the world. And you had traveled, I should back up and kind of give a bit of background on, your travel, my travel up until this point. I would say the key differentiator was that I studied abroad. Once I was working, I did a whole lot of trips that involved staying at hostels in my 20s. I lived abroad, I worked abroad for, I lived in Rome for 5 months and then had some other projects. And I actually took a sabbatical, a month-long sabbatical on my own to Australia, New Zealand before we even met. And I had a lot of experience and talking with people who had traveled long term, especially staying in hostels. One conversation with this guy in Argentina, I remember I was so proud that I was traveling for 2 whole weeks. Clearly as an American, that's a big deal. And when I shared that, because of course, one of the first questions is, how long are you traveling for? I was like, 2 weeks. Yeah. He just looked at me like, just so disappointed. He's like, how can you be in Argentina and only spend 2 weeks? Like, I don't even remember anything about him other than just that look on his face. And I think that's been like really the sabbatical. I call it my sabbatical seed grew, because it was like, oh, well, this actually is kind of normal in other countries. It's totally normal, especially like UK, like gap year and things like that are much more common than in the US. And so I had a lot of exposure to that idea. I at the time always was like, yeah, but that's never something I'm actually going to do. And the other thing, did we go? I think we went to a Meet Plan Go.
We did.
Maybe later. That was like kind of once we kind of made that decision.
Yeah.
But anyway, the turning point of like the travel and adventure show. But the background, like, so you had done a lot of international traveling, but not like hostels.
No, just your typical 2-week traveling, a week vacation, 2-week vacation. I have never backpacked, never stayed at hostels, never did any of that kind of stuff. It was more of PTO, like just vacations, right?
Yeah, hotels,
whatever. So I have no experience with hostels, no experience with homestays, any of those kind of like
more alternative lodging.
Right, just your typical. We stayed at a hotel and we left. Right, at the time there was no Airbnbs. You just stayed at hotels. You did your vacations.
Yeah.
You went home. Or we stayed with family, right? Depending on where we visited, right? So my travel was kind of typical, professionals go on vacation, you do hotels, you come back, you go to work.
Mm-hmm.
Never studied abroad, never did any of that. So I didn't have a lot of experience there. So I guess the turning point in January with travel, okay, a little bit more of an idea. Again, not a hard no, but still no. And eventually, as I was starting to network and try to figure out, what next steps are, I was talking to my CMO at the firm that was being acquired. She's a very successful leader, has been a leader in the marketing space for years, highly respected for her and all that. And as we were talking about kind of like opportunities for me and kind of, who else can I network, talk to, what else? I brought up the idea of Susie saying, oh, yeah, and then Susie wants us to just take a year off and go traveling. And she was like, go do that. And I said, what? I said, and she said to me, look, Jan, she's like, look, you've got your whole life to work. You take a year off. It's a small blimp in regards to your total professional life. She goes, no one will bat an eye. No one will see any difference. It's just, and the experience and the opportunity to do something like that will always be something you'll remember and cherish versus just kind of working through, right? So I was like, and I was not expecting to hear that answer out of her, right? I would, figure, because again, she's had a great professional life, so very successful and kind of moved up through her life. So I was expecting her to be like, okay, you can network here, do this, here's your steps, do that. For her to just turn around and say, no, you're absolutely nuts. This is what you should be doing. Why are you talking to me about networking? You should go out and start planning this. And I go, oh, all right. Well, at that point, I said, huh. I came home and told Susie this, and she jumped on it, right? So it became this like, okay, well, she said you should go do this. You gotta do it. You should listen to her. So that helped come to the decision a little bit easier. Again, still a lot of concerns about other things, right, outside of professional life. But
I don't remember if that conversation. I think there's a couple other things that popped up, after January, to explore this idea further. Like basically the theme is like little baby steps to explore this idea and really address your concerns. So I think from a career standpoint, your manager was absolutely right. And one of my favorite stats is that out of an average career length, 6 months is just 1%. So like we were considering like 2%, taking 2% of our career to go and do this thing that we wanted to do for our life. And I can guarantee you when we're 90, we're not going to be like, oh man, I really wish we worked that year. Like that was just, yeah. So I mean, I didn't know that stat at the time, but it does put things into perspective, right? And especially even smaller when you think about like a month, which is what I really advocate for. You know, yes, I do have clients that are, you know, looking to take a big leap, but I know that for a lot of people, that's just like way too extreme. So that's why I'm thinking like, you know, and I advocate for a month because it's kind of that sweet spot, like between, you know, just like a 2-week vacation, like feeling rushed and, you know, squeezing it all in and then being like exhausted when you get back and I need a vacation from my vacation, blah. You know, versus like taking a truly huge leap and life change and, you know, fully like packing up your house and, you know, putting stuff in storage and all of that, which we did. But like a month is just so much more approachable because you can kind of keep things as is, but it's still like a stretch to be able to like have a more meaningful experience in a destination, like really get to know a place compared to just like bouncing around, you know, place to place and then coming home exhausted. But so I think your conversation with your manager helped qualm some of your fears around work. The other thing too, like, because again, you had to find a new job anyway, right? The thing that like a lot of people, like your initial thought was like, oh, I'm gonna have this big gap on my resume, like, oh, that, you know, again, it's not normal in the US. But then my response to that was like, well, if that's not something that an employer looks upon fondly or well, or like has judgments around that, then that's probably not a place that you want to work anyway. And I think that that was like a shift in perspective that helped you kind of come around to like, okay, you know, I could see how, you know, people take breaks for all sorts of things. Obviously, travel is more of an elective reason, right? But you want to be with an employee, like if you have to find a new job anyway, you want to be with an employer that is more open-minded, can see the value, you know, because we learned a lot of things on the road, you know, not like technical things, right? But for sure, things, you know, you ended up at a global company and working with people from all over and, you know, those types of soft skills. But anyway.
Yeah, and I think once I made the decision, I started talking to more other professionals, and I think I didn't really receive a lot of negative. Was jealous, right? So at that point, it helped reinforce. So the more people I brought up this idea and talked through, I think helped solidify my decision, right? It wasn't something I'm doing absolutely crazy and going to uproot and wreck my career.
Mm-hmm.
So as I was talking to more and more other professionals about, hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing, people were like, oh, that sounds great, that sounds awesome. They were jealous, you know, they were supportive. So I think once I got kind of that reassurance from a person and started talking to other people about it, they were kind of reassuring that this was also a good decision for us at the time, right? To be able to like, and they were supportive. I think this is a good idea. I think this is great. You'll enjoy it. So I think that helped, right? As more and more I talked to more, because I think that was the thing. I just didn't talk to anybody about outside of that because I was very concentrated on I need to find my next job, and then that's how I was networking. So now that was an option, and I was bringing it up as I was networking, people were like, no, I think that's a great idea to take a break and then do that. And then ever since taking that break, I've been very supportive of others that want to do something like this. Even people within my team that want to take a 3-week vacation, right? Or even I've got some others that are my team are taking a 4-week vacation. Very supportive. I think it's a great way to having been able to put myself in that position and experience that. I'm very, as a manager, as a leader of my team, I'm very open and understand the benefits of having a longer break, right? And then work will be work. We will find somebody to cover. None of it is detrimental that you can't take 4 weeks off to do something. So I've been very supportive of this experience has helped me be a lot more supportive, a lot more agreeable as I'm talking to my team and as we're working through work schedules and all that, to be able to say, yeah, do it. Let's take the 4 weeks, go spend some time with your family. We'll figure it out. We'll get you, we'll cover within the team. And I think that also helps them not be afraid to bring up to me PTO, right? I'm a very big advocate, regardless of a day or two. If they need it, they need it. They need a break. It gives people time to unwind, disconnect a little bit. So I think having that experience of working, trying to build up to understanding the sabbatical and how that translates to benefits now actually has reworked my thinking on how I treat my teams, my people that work for me around kind of the benefits of time off, right? So I think that's been one of the big kind of mind shift changes from that, because to Susie's point, early in my career, I didn't want to take longer than a week or 2 weeks because I was afraid something was going to go wrong, or it's going to look poorly on me for being out for 2 weeks because I wanted to take a vacation because I wanted to make sure I worked hard to get the job done, the role, the promotions, the feedback, and at this point, that was kind of that mindset. But now being able to experience this, I don't have that as much anymore. Yeah. And then actually, to Susie's point, culturally, right, as I talk to other people, I work in a global company. As I talk to other people throughout the world and how they handle PTO and their time off, I see that the U.S. has a very different mindset, right? It's work, and then play later, right?
Like when you retire. Yeah. So like just hang tight for another 30 40 years.
Like, you can do whatever you want. So that also helps too, right?
Yeah, so, and like think about Europe. I mean, they take off a month like August, like on the regular, like the whole thing. I mean, their economy doesn't shut down. Like there's processes to make that happen. And a couple other like scientific benefits that I've learned since then, now that I'm specializing in sabbaticals, is the people who take off more time, they're the ones that are way more likely to get promoted. The other thing, thinking about a longer trip, like a sabbatical. So again, like I kind of focus on 1 month. It's really a benefit for your employer, because most things can't wait a month to do, right? Like usually with a 1 or 2 week vacation, you just end up working all the way up until that point, and then you come back to a pile of work. But with a sabbatical, you actually have to transition your work to somebody else in most cases. And so that helps the cross training that like every company says that they want to do, but it's not really a priority. They don't take the time to do it. So it's forcing that issue. And, I think it helps people grow. Like the backfill will grow from a leadership standpoint, a skills standpoint. Like there's so many benefits because, I mean, at the end of the day, like everybody's ultimately replaceable. I know we don't like to think that. We think we're amazing and, so great, but like at the end of the day, everybody's replaceable. And you're really helping your company by putting these like processes in place, to make them put in a better position, right? Okay, so that was career. I'm conscious of time. If you do have any questions as we're talking, pop them in the comments and we can address them live. But a couple other concerns that you had was cost and the financial impact. So the other thing that I did was we met with our financial advisor with this idea. Thankfully, she was open-minded. And I think that once we ran the numbers, that was another thing that just made us feel more comfortable with that decision. We like set a budget, and spoiler alert, turns out that traveling to all 7 continents in the span of a year actually cost less than just living in Chicago for the prior year. And we're not like super extravagant, obviously very privileged to be able to do this, right? But we just used miles and points as we could. We stayed with a lot of friends and family. We did stay at some hostels in private rooms. And, we did things in, more budget conscious way. So this was not like a lavish, but most people just hear, oh, year-long, trip around the world, all 7 continents, that must be like $1 million. Like, no, not at all. Like, there's ways, travel doesn't have to be expensive. I'm a huge proponent of that. And, thinking about a month, usually the way I see it is that a month, if you travel slowly, especially the way I, suggest, where you kind of find a home base, you can do some side trips from there. It usually ends up being about the same as your 1 or 2 week vacation anyway. So it's like, just make that swap. So it's really, a matter of figuring out the budget and then figuring out what travel can fit into that. Cause I do think that, finances is a big part of it. And, at least to get Jan on board, kind of going through the process, running the numbers and seeing like, yes, this isn't going to like put us, in financial ruin. We were obviously very young. We were in our 30s, and we had plenty of time to work through investments. And even I think it helped us, like, I don't want to say make money, but we had like a great tax return because we weren't making any money. Like, because we did August to August. So I did the other thing that kind of solidified plans was I was able to get a leave of absence for my consulting job. So we knew we had at least one income like to come back to straight away. The process of getting that leave of absence was not nearly as hard as I built it up in my head, which is true for so many of my clients. It was like literally a conversation where the answer was like, just fill out this paper and it's done. Like, yes, there's like knowledge transfer and things that needed to happen, but it was way easier than I thought. So I think that we covered a couple of the biggest concerns that you had: cost and, kind of impact on career. Childcare is going to be another one, as we consider doing like maybe a month-long sabbatical sometime in the future. We have a 3-year-old. And I know this is a concern for a lot of clients too. And there's creative ways to make this work. And something I shared on the last live was, especially if maybe your partner can't go, let's say you have a month, maybe your partner can't go for the full time, you can supplement that. If you need a break and some childcare, you can supplement that with getting, maybe grandparents to join you, friends. There's also day camps, just like there's day camps here. There's day camps like in Europe, for example, where your child can have some like really cool educational and adventurous experiences depending on their interests. So, that's something to consider as an option as well. And the other thing is childcare and camps are much less expensive in, places around the world outside of the US, and much more flexible. I know here in the US, it's like people have spreadsheets and registration dates, and you got to like piece together all these camps, and it's like way less, it's way more chill in other places. So, it's not something that you need to plan too much around. But anyway, we have just a couple minutes. So I wanted to kind of summarize what I think I did well and the mistakes. You can jump in. I think a few things: patience, positivity, perseverance, like not hammering. And I'm sure that I did so much planning on my own. I bet you by the time you were even come around, like I had an itinerary, like kind of formulated. But I think what it comes down to, like the person that really wants to do this, like do the research, help the process, don't pressure it. Involving third parties, so for example, Jan, your boss, getting perspectives from them, other peers, our financial advisor, for example, like hearing from other people is so much more helpful than hearing and making a decision based just on what I say. Yeah. I think that's so important. Exploring the possibilities of things like the travel and adventure show was really helpful, I think, just to kind of get the excitement. And really, I think more of a thought or the mindset of this is something that, we need to do together. It's not like you versus me and I'm going to convince you. It's more like, okay, let's address these concerns. Let's, work. It's like just each problem has a solution, it has options. Let's, just chip away at that one by one. And, more like big picture thinking, like, we're going to regret not doing this. If, like, because we got so far that if we decided, no, I just want to go get the job, then I think that there would be some regret. So just thinking like, okay, your 90-year-old self, like, what would you want for your 90-year-old self to like have memories of? I think some of the mistakes I made was because this is something that I've actively had to work on, is sharing too many of like the thoughts in my head and like travel ideas. I mean, you didn't mention that, but I'm sure I probably like laid it on like a lot more than I needed to, versus like meeting you where you're at and like thinking, like focusing more on the concerns than like the, oh, we could go here, we could do this, and it could be great. Because I know when I give you all those ideas, you like want to solve it and like do the operational side of things. I've made big progress on that in the last 10 years. And I don't propose the idea too early. I don't think that was necessarily a issue, but I do think for some people, like timing could be important, and considering like, you probably already know what the objections might be or the challenges that they might have. So kind of like thinking through some options for that could be helpful to do before like proposing the idea. I mean, that's really just more knowing your partner and adjusting as needed. Anything else that you think was good, or
just the time, the patience? I think that, I mean, just giving me time to think on my own and figure it out, I think is helpful, right? I'm a little bit methodical. So I like to kind of think things through. So just giving me the space and time to actually think about it helps, right? Versus just kind of asking, I know you say be persistent, but it's a way of giving space.
Yeah.
It's a balance, right? So it doesn't come across as nagging, right? You
Yeah,
just
yeah,
gotta
yeah.
find the right balance with your partner. For me, she gave me the space to kind of think it through on my own. Let me process it. Let me come to you, my decision, and I think that helped a lot too as well. So,
we'll do one last question. What would you tell somebody who, maybe if they were in your position and saying like, I want to go travel for a month, but they're not on board, like what would you advise them? What would you tell them, if you put yourself in their shoes?
not sure.
So like if I came to you, we've never done anything like this.
Okay.
And I'm like, let's go for a month somewhere. And like a month is big for you. Like now I know a month is not. So like we took this big leap, and then we've taken subsequent month-long sabbaticals since then. Well, at least one. I've taken multiple.
Yeah.
But like, so after that year long, months like whatever. But to somebody else, like a month long, it's like, okay, think about 2012, Jan, you'd only taken like maximum of 2 weeks. And now I come to you and I say, let's live abroad for a month. Yay. What do you think 2012 Jan? Well, you probably know what 2012 Jan would say, but now let's fast forward. You talk to 2012 Jan and tell him what advice would you have?
At the end of the day, work is not, it's not everything, right? For me at the time, work was everything, right? Because it was my identity, it was who I was, I was trying to become successful. I think sharing with others that work shouldn't be, it's a priority, but it shouldn't be your main priority, right? There's more to it. Work will be there, right? It's not going to end. I think if you've got a great team and a great supportive work environment, I think that will help kind of drive and be able to get to that answer that you want better, faster. And I think and I've been lucky. I've been in very supportive work environments throughout my career that people have been helpful around some of the things that I want to do, either just for my career growth versus also in personal life. So I think that just putting that into perspective helps a lot. And I think that's kind of where I would kind of frame things up for 2012 Jan, right? That it's just not, your ultimate, it's not gonna detour it, it's not gonna derail it. It's a small pause, right? And it's a very small pause considered in the hindsight of time, right, that you have toward what you're trying to get to. So I guess that would be my approach.
Cool. And side note, when Jan returned, he ended up going into a completely different industry than like a totally new job.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would have happened if you didn't take your career break.
I think taking the break helped me kind of figure out what I really want to do, what I don't want to do, what I don't want to return working to, right? Because at that point I haven't done what I've been doing for a year, and coming back, it helped say like I just don't want to be in this field anymore. So I was able to utilize my past experience to find something completely different and do something that I probably wouldn't have gotten into had I not taken the break and taken the time off from my job search to be able to do. So you make a good point there.
Yeah. Yes. And the other thing I know a month, obviously you don't have to quit to take a month off. There's plenty of ways to kind of slice it and dice it to make that work. I can help you with that. But I think that if you are considering career change, job change, taking a sabbatical in between, you ending one job and starting another is like the perfect opportunity to do that. And just food for thought if you're thinking about finding something a little bit different. But anyway, I do want to close because we're already over. But thank you so much for joining me. I know you did not want to do this, but I think you did fabulous. So thank you. And one closing thing, a special for August that I am doing is a 30-minute free Live Abroad for a Month this year roadmap session. So this is going to get into exactly how and when. So removing some of those roadblocks of like, I'm so busy or I can't get time off work, any of those type of objections that you or your partner have. We'll get through that in 30 minutes, totally free. And a special bonus, I'm giving out 10 of those spots. So just DM me or comment below and I'll reach out to you if you're interested in more details there. I'm also doing a special bonus for the sessions held in August, which is one of my daily emails that I have in my paid Live Abroad for a Month program. You can get one of those for free if you do one of these sessions this month. So that's my little marketing promo. Thanks for joining us, Alan, and everybody else. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.